So good morning and welcome to this Primary Markets webinar for the International Health Group. Today we are hosting Gavin Ritz, the CEO of IHG, who's going to outline the business and the opportunity. Today's format is a simple one. We allow for 5 to 10 minutes presentation and then another sort of 5 minutes for questions. It's a fairly familiar format to many that have been on before. If you have a question, please type them into the forum, the question forum on the panel of GoToWebinar. As a reminder, the webinar will be recorded, edited and posted to the platform in the next day or so. And so without further ado, I will hand over to Gavin.
Thank you, Nick, and to Primary Markets for inviting us to this forum. And thank you for the attendees for joining. The story begins about 20 years ago, actually, with my wife, Debbie Ritz, who worked as an independent midwife in New Zealand and now works as a delivery midwife in Australia. Debbie felt that the life and death situation of newborn resuscitation was far too critical and important to rely on operator technique, getting a seal on an infant's face with the mask in use. She lamented over and over again to me that there had to be a better way to seal on an infant's face. Debbie said that, we've got the most wonderful equipment in the world, manufactured by the best companies in the world, but where the rubber meets the road, all this equipment's clever engineering failed. And it's an incredibly stressful situation to be struggling to get a seal all the while the newborn requires air and the clock is ticking. So I guess what we intend to do here at International Group is become the next dominant player with our Resuscisure leak-free mask. And effective airway solutions to newborns and pediatrics. Serious airway management problems sort of basically, I guess, has been unsolved until now. Basically, all resuscitation masks just don't seal. This is a pretty serious situation where you have to get very accurate pressures to a baby's lungs. It's sometimes extremely difficult to get that when the masks don't seal at all. So the babies just don't get sufficient air. And of course, the clinician stress is incredibly very high at this stage of the game because the child is basically teetering on life and death. So I guess our solution, we've developed a bunch of masks that seal basically 100%. We have an instant gentle suction sealing system. You can actually see the picture down below. There's two different sizes down there. And then we have a torus edge sealing system, which we're busy in the patent process at the moment. And what this does, it basically removes the need for clinician techniques because they've tried all sorts of techniques to squeeze and seal and do all sorts of other things to try to get the seal 100%. So our solution, we had this initially trialed at Westmead some years ago by head of anesthetics, Dr. Neil Street. That's him in the middle. That picture was taken at Westmead Children's. And this is what Neil had to say. Initially, I was surprised that I easily attached to the face and how well it's sealed. I was able to completely remove my hand from the mask and ventilate the patient easily with a bag of the T-piece. This patient had an easy airway, but still very impressive. He's done maybe 50 babies, I think, up till now. And the T-piece, that's really just a bunch of circuitry that connects to an anesthetic machine. So the market opportunity and the value proposition, what are we offering? Basically, all newborns should get the best opportunity for life. And we know 10% of all newborns require some form of airway intervention. This is basically comes from research and statistics that's collected through all hospitals throughout the whole world and specifically in Australia and New Zealand. Our Resuscisure masks seal 100%. So we basically solve a major clinical problem. All masks leak, so I mean, there's no mask that doesn't leak, and it's irrespective of the clinician. So they can leak actually between 20 and 60%, and in some cases when the clinicians don't do this very often, and that's most of the time, it can leak even up to 90%, and this is a serious situation. And as I said before, resuscitation masks on the market just really don't seal at all. The worldwide market opportunity, about 10 million units. That's all the first world. It may well be double that. We're not 100% sure what those real numbers are. Resuscisure sealing systems could be used in other clinical settings. As I've mentioned to you, we actually assess them in anesthetic situations, but it can be assessed by, it can be also used in other clinical settings like NICU wards and that type of thing. So who are our target customers? Basically hospitals, that's children and newborns, so that's worldwide. So it's delivery wards where all babies are born, that's anywhere in the world. Neonatal intensive care units, that's where they look after very sick babies. And the transportation of unwell babies, or infants for that matter, and in anesthetics. This is where we are at the moment. We've got a bunch of customers and luminary sites across the world, mainly in Australia and New Zealand, and we've got a trial going on in San Diego in California. Our initial trials were done at Royal Melbourne, and we're still busy with clinical trials there at the moment. The competitive landscape. On the left-hand side, the left-hand column there, you can actually see those are the companies. The top three, that's GE, Fisher & Paykel, and Draeger, all equipment manufacturers. They manufacture resuscitation, ventilation equipment, and anesthetic equipment. And the bottom two, Amber and Liddell, these are resuscitation specialists, and they manufacture bag and mask and that type of thing. They've somehow ignored in 40 years, we're not even sure why, mask sealing has been ignored by the equipment manufacturers. Maybe because they focus on the engineering and equipment rather than the seals. And also you can see on the final column on the right hand side there, none of these things can really be converted to CPAP. So they have different masks for different things and different applications, but none of them seal. And I guess that's really the Okay, so milestones. We developed our first prototypes around about 2012. We did some bench testing to show they were sort of somewhat effective, but we really got going in 2015 when we got TGA approvals. Our trial was done at Westmeads at the anesthetics, and that came out pretty well. And then we had a mannequin study done in Royal Melbourne that also came out pretty good. We tooled up at the end of 2015 for production masks, a 50mm mask there. We also had patents protection at that time, and we appointed a local distributor. I think it was December 2015. Last year, we had a trial begin at Sharp Mary Birch, that's in San Diego in California. We had our PCT patents that actually ran till July of this year. We acquired a bunch of luminary hospital sites. It's in, I think it's in the earlier slide that I showed. And we still have trials going on at Gosford, that's in Central Coast in New South Wales, and Royal Women, that's in Melbourne. We launched the product in Australia and New Zealand beginning sort of middle of last year. And we also got FDA approvals to market in the USA. That's how we managed to get the trials going in the USA without any going through any ethics committee. And we also acquired a acceleration commercialization grant from the Australian government last year. This year we have finalized our patents we've got patent applications in a bunch of countries, which I'll go through in a later slide. We acquired a few more luminary hospitals this year, and that I showed you some of those hospital sites in one of the earlier slides. We've also developed a pretty sophisticated online clinical education and tracking system, which is separate to our website. You can actually just go to our website and click on it, and then join if you want to see. We've developed some significant training and education systems there. We also completed another design, a slightly different design that can be used across a number of different clinical settings. We just gave it a name, Taurus. We don't really have a full name for it as yet. We're also about to acquire further IP and rights for another system that is linked to our system, a CPAP strapping system, which we're actually going to get trials also in San Diego. So next year we intend to launch through the USA, EU, and China, and also complete our IP protection of the Taurus design, and also our regulatory approvals in China, EU, and Canada. And in 2019, we intend to roll out to the rest of the world. Intellectual property and regulatory pathway. We have patents on our gentle suction system already awarded in Australia, and we have patents pending in China, USA, India, Canada, and New Zealand, Brazil, and EU. And those countries there, and probably including Japan, would probably make up 80% of all the revenues in the medical world. There are significant other places that we could focus on too. We filed our our patents at our Taurus system in Australia this year. Regulatory approvals, we can market. We've got approvals to market in the USA, Australia, and New Zealand. And we're busy with regulatory approvals in the EU. It's a little bit tougher, the EU, but we've managed to get that going. The board and management team, everybody in the management team and the board have significant experience across management and sales, engineering, and in medical devices and in clinical settings. Matt and Debbie Ritz are both nurses. Debbie's a midwife, and Matt was an anesthetic nurse. He's now in management. The capital raise, we're currently finalizing a capital raise for 2.8 million. We've got 200,000 committed. We're looking at negotiations of further 1 million, and we're seeking another 1.6. The terms are as follows: 90 cents a share, and we've got 12.5 million shares on issue. And our pre-offer valuation was 11.2 million. So we're going to be issuing 3.1 million shares there. Also, I'm converting those loans that I paid to the that were put to the company at 234,000. They'll be converted at these at that share price. We also have an executive summary, an IM, and term sheets available. And also, if you would like a evaluation report, that can also be provided. The use of funds, there on the left-hand column is our expense items. That's marketing and sales, tooling and production, clinical trials, product development, clinical education, regulatory compliance, intellectual property, overhead and salaries and insurances, and that amounts to approximately 2.8 million.
So, Gavin?
Yes, Nick?
Before we go through to the summary page, just a couple of questions then come through. First one was, it was looking here at, looking back at the plans for this year and next year. That distribution and really pushing and getting out to market. What is the strategy for getting product to market, and which channels are sort of being selected for that?
Okay, so that's a big question. Let's look at the USA first. We have analyzed the United States in great detail, and we've looked at distributors. We've got access to a number of distributors and introduced to particular distributors across the neonatal space. We've looked at which markets, in other words, which they've got all fancy names in America, IDNs and GPOs and stuff, and we've looked at the key states in the United States where we can actually do distribution. So we actually have to set up ourselves initially in the United States, and then appoint key distributors across those different states, and we may have to go state by state.
Okay,
at this stage of the game.
It's about building out a big sales and marketing team. It's very much using distributors in each geography or each market, and centralizing sort of marketing and promotion to support those.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
The model.
Sorry.
The key model in distribution in medical devices is really access to the clinicians and access to the purchasing networks within each separate state. If there's some distributors there that have access to more than one or two states, that's great. Generally, it seems like some have and some haven't. We've really only analyzed the top 12 states of the United States and had access to the distributors in those 12 states. We haven't really looked at further. It's a huge market.
Yeah. Where is the product being produced?
Here in Australia, in Sefton. It's New South Wales.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so it's been manufactured locally. Great.
That's correct. Yeah.
And the last question that came up was, you talked about maybe future products under development.
Yes.
Obviously, there's the face mask. What else is there as a potential?
There's a lot of serious airway problems in infant resuscitation and anesthetics. I guess the key is that is what the first things that neonatologists do when they look after sick babies and ensure they've got proper airways. We actually see a significant move away from intubation, that's putting a tube down a baby's esophagus and into their lungs, and in towards simpler delivery systems like our air delivery systems. So there's all sorts of add-ons that need to be done. For example, delivery of certain agents like surfactants into the infant's lungs and stuff. This needs to be delivered effectively through either aerosol methods or other methods. So these fittings that need to go on. The markets are quite, we haven't really analyzed the markets in anesthetics, but pediatric anesthetics. In other words, that's older than 2 months old baby. There's significant problems in anesthetizing younger children. Say they fall off a bed or something, break an arm. They don't want to put them through a major anesthetic process. They just want to lightly anesthetize them. And this is the method that most anesthetists want to do. So they need really effective masks, and none of these masks seem to have been effective. We're not sure why nobody's ever focused on masks before, and the ceiling of masks for pediatrics and children, but I guess that's given us an opportunity. So there's many. There's also, we've looked at also other areas of infant monitoring, blood gas analysis and that type of thing, where they actually analyze the baby's blood gas to ensure that they get the right amount of oxygen and they actually releasing the carbon dioxide. So we've looked at looking at biomarkers in that area too. So there's a significant amount of work to be done in this area actually. Yeah. So it's actually endless. The product development.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how you spoke about it particularly in the introduction, that it's that manufacturers have really never looked to develop or to advance technology and in this particular niche of medical products. So a good opportunity there. So
absolutely, they haven't done it. They've totally neglected it in 40 years. Yeah.
Yes. So a very good opportunity. So look, we'll leave it there and finish it up, Gavin. Okay, we've sort of come to the 15 minutes, which is great, and thanks very much for a really clear overview of the product and the opportunity. Obviously, the summary of the raise is available at the listing on Primary Markets, seeking to raise 2.8 million.
That's correct.
There's obviously detailed IM and other information available, and we would recommend having a discussion with Gavin. And just to remind everyone, this has been recorded, and we'll push it out in the next day or so onto the platform and re-promote. So there's no more questions. Thanks very much, Gavin, for coming on and taking us through the opportunity.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the attendees, and thank you for Primary Markets for the webinar.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.